So it's 1:05. I think we're going to get started. So if I could ask everyone and then have a paper and pen so that you could jot down any questions. And then I'm going to have some time at the end to answer everything all at the same time, because this is going to be a lot of information and probably something that might be a little bit foreign to a lot of students, a lot of parents. And so I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of questions after. But let me introduce myself. My name is Brielle McNeil. I am the college admissions counselor for the Henderson location, and Keeman's also on the line. He's the college admissions counselor for the Summerlin location. So together we will attempt to answer all of your questions regarding how to pay for college, which is pretty much the most important part. Okay, so we are going to start with our agenda. So today we're going to do a brief overview of the FAFSA. We're not going to go into a lot of depth because all you seniors should have already completed this step. And all you juniors, we're going to have a detailed presentation and a webinar next year so that you're prepared for filling this out in October. And we're going to talk about the types of financial aid that are available. We're going to talk about scholarships. We're also going to talk about student loans. And then we're going to look at an estimated award letter so that we can really dig deeper, and when you're getting those in the mail, know exactly what you're looking at. And then at the end, we're going to answer any questions that you might have and be able to get those solved for you. Just a reminder to mute your lines. So FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So FAFSA is simply the application that you are going to enter your income and the student's income, if they worked during that year, and it's going to determine how much aid the student is eligible for and what types of student aid the student is eligible for. It is not what categories, it's just simply the application that you are going to enter your information, and then it's going to spit out a number. And that number is called the EFC number. EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. And it's the number that the federal government is going to give to universities to tell them what amounts of financial aid you're eligible for and in what categories the student has eligibility for. There are several types of financial aid. There's grants, scholarships, and loans. So grants and scholarships are free money. It is the money that you do not have to pay back. And there's several different ways in which to get those grants or scholarships. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then student loans are money that you have to pay back at the end of your program. So there's public loans and there's private loans, and we're going to dig deeper into how to get those loans if you need to utilize them. So let's talk about a financial aid timeline, because this is really important to know exactly what you should be working on at each time of the year. So for you seniors, this is really important, but for you juniors and sophomores, it's going to be valuable information for you and your parents to know what to do next year. So in September, you have to create what is called the FSA ID. And FSA ID is simply the way in which you're going to sign your FAFSA. You have to have an FSA ID for both the student and the parent. So go in September, create that FSA ID, one for your parent, one for the student. That way you're ready. So in October 1st, when the FAFSA opens, you'll be able to log right on to the FAFSA and complete that document as soon as you can. FAFSA is first come, first serve. So the earlier you do it in October, the better. It also is sometimes a requirement when you're completing scholarship applications. So you want to have that document completed. In November, once you've had your FAFSA completed and everything's good to go, you will receive a confirmation email from FAFSA. And on that confirmation email, you're going to see certain information, but what you're really looking for is your EFC number on there. Once you get that email confirmation, it could come before November. You're going to log back into fafsa.ed.gov, and you're going to print out your SAR, which stands for Student Aid Report. That SAR is going to be something that you're going to want to keep. Sometimes it's required for scholarships. Sometimes the university will ask for it. Sometimes they can't see your results from your FAFSA and then they ask you for your SAR. So you just want to make sure you have that printed out and always have it handy. And I would keep that year after year. In December, you're going to start to accept your early decision packages from universities. This will only be for students that have completed their applications during early decision. Not every student is going to, not every student is going to get this package, but if you do, that's the month that you're going to start to receive those and accept them. In January, you are going to continue to apply for outside scholarships. So this is really important because outside scholarship deadlines are typically around March. And so in January, this is the month that you're really going to ramp up and start to hit those scholarships really hard and apply for as many as you possibly can. Because March is going to creep up on you really quickly, and then you're going to be, really behind if you haven't completed those applications in a timely manner. And then in March, you're going to start to compare those financial aid offers that have been coming in, and you're going to look at an estimated award letter from one university and another and compare the two. And that's when the last slide that we're going to look at is going to come in handy because you're going to know what you're going to look at. May 1st, that is what is called the National Decision Day. So with COVID, this has kind of diminished, but I anticipate it coming back. National Decision Day is when universities will come out to your high school and they will sit down with students and they will sign an award letter and you're committing to a school. June 30th is the very last day that you can apply for the FAFSA, and that is too late. So if you're waiting until the very last day, then you are really, really far behind and you need to contact us for some assistance way before then. But June 30th is the last day that schools will accept the FAFSA for that year. And then August is normally the move-in date to your dorm room, and your university will provide all that information to you. So in your senior year, the timeline moves really quickly, and there's pretty much something to do every single month. So if you feel like maybe you don't have something to do that month, then contact us because there is something to do every month in your senior year. So let's talk about scholarships. So there's typically two types of scholarships. There's private scholarships and there's institutional scholarships. Private scholarships are all those scholarships that you see on the internet, all of those scholarships that your high school is giving to you to apply for. And institutional scholarships are awarded to you by the university or the college. And these institutional scholarships have to be used at that university that's awarding them. You can't take an institutional scholarship and go from MIT to Pepperdine or vice versa. So you have to use institutional scholarships at the university that is awarding them to you. Private scholarships, you can bring into another university. And typically the process that happens with that is you just have to have your award letter and send it to the university that you are going to be attending, and they will add those private scholarships onto your estimated award. So there's two types of scholarships that fall under both of those main categories. The first one is a needs-based scholarship. And this means that the family's income levels, according to the FAFSA, qualify you as in need for additional assistance. An academic or merit-based scholarship is a scholarship based on students' academic performance in high school. So they're going to look at your GPA, they're going to look at your ACT scores, they're going to look at your SAT scores for academic or merit-based scholarships. And with these scholarships, it's going to be really important that you are applying for them sooner rather than later, because a lot of these scholarships, the deadline is usually around January, December, so early on in your senior year. Needs-based scholarships, typically the deadline is March or April, but again, you have to meet FAFSA guidelines for needs-based scholarships. So you have to meet that criteria. How to qualify for scholarships. So a good majority of scholarships that I see, you do have to have your FAFSA completed. So a lot of parents would say to me in the past, I don't want to complete the FAFSA because I know I'm not going to qualify for anything. So that might be true. However, a lot of scholarships require you to have the FAFSA completed, and a lot of merit-based scholarships that are institutional-based will require you to have that FAFSA completed. You may not qualify for anything and you may not be using student loans, but they just want to see that you've taken that initiative to complete that document and that it is in their records. So complete the FAFSA even if you don't think you're going to qualify for anything or you're not going to use any federal aid. You also want to complete what is called the CSS profile, and this is completed on College Board. It does require a little bit more work than the FAFSA, and it does require a little bit more detailed financial information from your parent and from you, but there's additional scholarships that are available if you complete the CSS profile. So I do recommend to do it. It's not a requirement usually, but I would recommend to do both. And then complete additional scholarship applications after you've completed those two processes. So here's some application tips for scholarships. Organize your scholarship deadlines. You are going to have 30, 40 applications that you're working with at a time. Make a spreadsheet and keep organized with the deadlines of each scholarship. You're also going to want to create a resume. I know this might be foreign to a lot of students because maybe you haven't had a job or maybe you just haven't had the need for a resume, but on this resume, it should be very detailed. Any club that you've attended, any summer camp that you've attended, all of your volunteer experience, any awards that you've received from high school should be on this resume. You also want to start thinking about creating a LinkedIn profile. And this is really something that's kind of new in the recent years, but if you go through LinkedIn and see, maybe search for prospect Yale 2024, you can look at other students' LinkedIn profiles and see what information they're adding on there. But it's got to be very detailed if you're going to make this, because it is public and schools can take a look at your LinkedIn profile at any time. And then you want to start to collect letters of recommendation. I recommend at least 3 to 4. You want to ask teachers, community members, mentors, and I just tell students keep these on hand because you're not sure if you're going to need them, but you want to have them in case you do. And so ask teachers, mentors, community members early because you don't want to be asking them last minute and have them be bogged down with something else and not get to your letter. And then write an essay that can be tailored to multiple questions. So this is really important because when you're doing scholarships, you don't want to reinvent the wheel 100 times. So make sure you're writing an essay that can encompass a multiple amount of questions and that you can tailor to each scholarship. The tip here is if the scholarship requires 250-word essay, do not write 1,000 words because it will be thrown away. You want to make sure you're sticking to the criteria, 250 to 500 words, and you want to make sure that it is answering all the questions that that scholarship is requesting on the essay. Some questions to ask as a parent or as a student about a scholarship is this scholarship renewable? That means, will I get this scholarship year after year? Will I get it in my sophomore, junior, and senior year, or is it just given in my freshman year? What is the required GPA? Some scholarships have a 3.5 GPA, some 3.7. You just want to make sure that you are applying for scholarships that you qualify for and not scholarships that you are not get any results from. You want to make sure that you are keeping track if there's a minimum GPA that's required in order to renew that scholarship year after year. So some scholarships will say that you have to have a 3.9 GPA in order to apply and get it in your freshman year. And then year after year, you have to maintain a 3.7. That's just an example. So just know if there is a GPA requirement after you get to college that you have to maintain in order to keep that scholarship if it is renewable. Also, you want to ask if you will get that scholarship if you have a gap in attendance. So some students tell me that they are going to go on a mission trip or they decided that they want to travel before they go to college. Many scholarships that say you have to attend college right after high school in order to get that scholarship. So you just want to make sure you know all of the details of that scholarship before you make any solid plans on future events. Will you get this scholarship if you transfer majors? This is a big one because a lot of students go in exactly knowing what they want to major in college, and then they end up transferring in their sophomore year, and maybe that scholarship is not going to apply to your new major. So you need to make sure that if this is a renewable scholarship and you transfer majors, that you're still going to get that money. The next one is this scholarship need-based or is it academic-based? So if you see that the scholarship is need-based and you see an EFC number that doesn't qualify you for any funding, then you're not going to qualify for that scholarship if it is need-based. Sure, if it's need-based or academic-based before you complete that application. Okay, let's talk about student loans, because even though you may not think that you want to use student loans or you've just taught that you're not going to be using student loans, I have seen many situations at the end when we're going into financial clearance where all of a sudden student loans become a necessity. So let's talk about student loans. So Stafford loans are loans that are applied for automatically when the student completes the FAFSA application. There are two categories of Stafford loans. There's subsidized and there's unsubsidized loans. Subsidized means that interest will not accrue while you're going to school. Unsubsidized means that interest will accrue while you're going to school, but nothing is required to be paid while you're attending. There are two requirements that require the student to receive these loans, and that's the master promissory note and the entrance counseling. And those are completed on studentaids.gov, and I put that link there for you so that when I send this out to families, that you'll have that link available. Perkins loans is another type of low interest student loan. And this is the one that you kind of have to ask a lot of questions to the university, because not every university allows a student to use a Perkins loan when they're attending that specific university. So Stafford can be used anywhere. Perkins, it depends on the university of where they can use them. And I put the link there so that you can dig a little bit deeper into what a Perkins loan is and really understand what questions to ask the university. Then the next two loan categories are for parents and for students. So let's talk about the top two really quickly a little bit more. Stafford loans, a student only gets $5,500 per year in their own name. So if a student has $20,000 in a remaining balance and they only qualify for $5,500 in their own name, and the family is requiring student loans, then it's going to be mandatory for a parent or a cosigner to get involved, because a student cannot hold student loans all in their name when they're in their undergraduate program. So the Parent Plus loan is applied for by the parent. It is credit-based, and it is a program that you can cover the entire remaining balance of the student's account using the Parent Plus loan. This student loan is a little bit higher in percentage rate. It's about 7.78%, but the key is that it's credit-based. If a parent does not get approved credit-wise, the student will get an additional $4,000 in their unsubsidized loan category that falls under the Stafford loan automatically based on the denial. A private loan is applied for by the student, but it does require good credit as well. And that's where a cosigner comes into play. So that cosigner has to have good credit. And if the cosigner has good credit, the percentage is determined on how good the credit is. So the percentage can be 4%, it can be 17%. Go ahead and please mute your line. Thank you. So if a parent doesn't get approved for the Parent Plus loan, they're not going to be the cosigner for the private loan. You will have to get someone else to cosign on that private loan because it does require good credit. But if a student gets a private loan and they have a really good percentage rate, and after they graduate, they make 12 consecutive payments, then that cosigner is removed off of the private loan. And with the Parent Plus loan, the parent is on it for the life of the loan. So I know it gets a little bit tricky. I'm probably going to have a lot of questions after the presentation. So just go ahead and write those down and we can answer them after. Okay, so this is the really important slide. So I don't know how many seniors we have on the line, but this is an example of an award letter that you're going to get from a university. So let's go line by line and we will go over what each one means. So estimated cost of attendance is $38,400. This is the cost of attendance at the university without housing, without meal plans, without books. This is just the base cost of attendance. So in this example, it's $38,400. And then we have tuition and fees. And so we're going to have $24,500 that falls into that. Room and board. A lot of universities will require students to live on campus. during their freshman year. There's no getting around that if the university requires you to live on campus. Some schools don't require you to, but this is not a fixed amount. So $9,400 on the award letter will typically be the base cost. It really will depend on when you go to purchase your housing, how much your actual housing is going to cost, because you might get in there and they only have apartments left. And those apartments may cost $15,000 instead of the $9,400. Books and materials and supplies, this is also a variable cost because it can be much more than $1,000. It could also be less. So it really just depends on how much your books are going to cost, how much your supplies are going to cost. Obviously, if you're in something like pre-med, you're going to have a lot more cost than if you are in something like business. Because you have to buy scrubs, you have to buy your stethoscope, you have to buy all sorts of additional supplies that go along with that major. And then they put travel, miscellaneous on there. They're assuming that you're going to need a new computer. So some of these costs might apply, some might not. But then when you get down on the award letter, the school is automatically assuming that students are going to be using student loans. So that's where these award letters get a little bit tricky, because you might be looking at an overall balance and the school is assuming that you're going to be using student loans. And if you're not, then your remaining balance could be a lot higher than a student that is using student loans. So we talked about the federal Perkins loan, and that is the loan that is sometimes not awarded by a certain university, sometimes it is. So that's the one that you have to really ask about. And then the subsidized and the unsubsidized loans are the ones that are automatically applied for when you complete your FAFSA, but the student has to complete the master promissory note and the entrance counseling in order to receive them. So it's very simple to get these removed off of an estimated award letter by the university. All you have to do is contact your financial aid department or your admissions department and say, I'm not planning on using any student loans. Please remove those off of my estimated award letter, and they can take them off. So you're going to receive emails to complete certain paperwork. If you're not planning on using student loans, please let the school know ahead of time so that they can get those taken off. On this award letter, you're also going to see scholarship. So the school is also going to put the highest possible scholarship that a student can receive, not actually knowing of whether they can actually get that scholarship. So you want to make sure that you're asking to your school, is this my actual scholarship or is this just an estimate? And am I going to get this scholarship year after year? Is it renewable? On here, you also see the federal Pell Grant. So this is where award letters can be deceiving, because the federal Pell Grant is given to students that are need-based, and it's based on the EFC number of your FAFSA. So the lower your EFC number is, the more money you're going to get from the federal government. So the more Pell Grant, the higher it is, the less you're going to get. Typically at about 6,000 on your EFC, you're not going to see any federal Pell Grant at all given to the students' awards. So that would be just a section that you just need to remove off of your estimated award letter. The SEOG grant, this is random. It is completely subjective on the university, and there's no application that you can complete in order to get the SEOG grant. But it is also need-based. So if you don't qualify for the Pell Grant, chances are you're not going to qualify for an SEOG grant either. But if it does, it just kind of automatically appears on the award around May. And that will be subjective on the university. The next one down is a state scholarship, and this depends on what state you go to of whether you're going to get a state scholarship. Some states give state scholarships like California, some do not, like Arizona. So it really just depends on what state you're going to school in and what state you are a resident in of whether you get a state scholarship. Federal Work Study is a program that you are going to indicate whether you are wanting to participate on your FAFSA. So when you complete the FAFSA, it's going to ask you a question. It's going to say, are you interested in federal work study? This is pretty much having a job on campus that is going to pay your tuition instead of a paycheck. But you do have to indicate whether you want to participate on your FAFSA, and then you have to get a position on campus that qualifies for federal work study. So if you haven't done either, then this is also a category that you are not going to receive. So you can see, based on this award letter, that if you don't have any of the student loans, you don't have any of the Pell Grants, you don't get any of the scholarships, your remaining balance is going to be a lot higher than what is indicated on the award letter that you might receive from a university. So it does take a little bit more digging into, asking a lot more questions to the university or the admissions department, and then talking it over with your family to make sure you're comfortable with what they have listed on your award letter. And if it's not accurate, having them remove that so you could get a bigger picture of what you're actually receiving and what you're actually going to be utilizing. Scholarships usually won't get announced until around April, May. And at that time, all you have to do is really simply take a picture of that award letter and email it to the university so that they can get that as an estimated award. The key to scholarships is that you have to be the person who is communicating with that scholarship and the university, and you are responsible for getting that money to the university. The university is not going to contact the scholarships to get that money for you. So if you get a scholarship, let's just use National Merit Society, and you get $10,000 from them, you need to be contacting them to get that money to the university, or at the end when you're going on to your sophomore year and that money hasn't been sent to the university, they're going to put a hold on your account, and it's going to be a lot harder to actually get a hold of the scholarship foundation if you haven't done it in your freshman year. Okay, so now is the time for questions. So if you have any questions for me, just unmute yourself, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
When should we fill out the CSS profile?
I would do that at the same time as the FAFSA, so October 1st.
And what percentage rate is Stafford loans?
You mean what percentage rate of the overall balance, or the percentage?
7.8% on the.
Okay.
What was that about?
So the annual percentage rate for the Stafford loans is roughly around 4.86%.
Okay.
That is in the student's name. So year after year, it increases. When I went to school, it was about 2%. So the Stafford is around 4.86, but it changes yearly. So it depends on what grade your student is in.
Last question is, did you do the FWS, Federal Work Study?
The Federal Work Study? I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is it okay if you decline that on the FAFSA, or is there any penalty for doing so? Or is it better that you check it and then decline it later?
Even if you check it and don't get a position on campus, it's not going to really matter. You can click it and say you're open to federal work study, but unless the university actually has positions available for federal work study and you take one of those jobs on campus, it's not going to matter. So it's better to say, yes, you're open to federal work study and then not get a position on campus than to not click that you're open and then want one and then not be eligible. With the Stafford loan, when you complete your master promissory note and your entrance counseling on studentloans.gov, they make you do, it's kind of like a tutorial educating you on what a student loan is, what the requirements are for a student, and it also educates you on all the percentage rates. So if a student completes the master promissory note and the entrance counseling, the school is automatically going to add that $5,500 in Stafford loans to their account. However, you can get those removed. Say you accept your Stafford loans and you've done your MPN and your entrance counseling, and those the money, it has been added onto the student account. And then all of a sudden you get a lot of scholarships that come in. You can call the admissions department or the financial aid department at the university that you're attending and say, I want to remove my Stafford loans, and they can do it. Usually it requires a statement or some sort of document in the student portal from the university, but it can be removed even if you have accepted them already.
I had a question. So I'm going on a mission for 2 years, and then I'm coming back. I'm going to go to BYU. So I'm going to have to redo my FAFSA and everything else, right? Like,
you are. So the FAFSA has to be done every year in October. So even if you do it in your freshman year, you have to do it year after year. You're going to need to do it October 1st of your sophomore year, October 1st of your junior year, all the way through graduate school. So the FAFSA has to be done every single year. I recommend to you, Josh, to do it even next year, even if you're going to go on your mission trip. Just do it every single year, just so you could have it in case plans change and then you decide to go to school. Because it is first come, first serve for some funding, you just want to make sure that's done.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then communicate with your university. They're very familiar with mission trips at BYU, so they can give you better direction on maybe paperwork. So I worked for a private Christian university, and we had a form that had to be filled out on the student portal so that we knew what was happening. So just make sure you're communicating with them so they know exactly what's going on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Did I give enough information regarding scholarships and student loans and how to read your award letter?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Did I give enough or so much information that you guys got it all? Or is there some people that might be a little bit hesitant to ask a question?
Can we ask through email if it's something more personal?
Oh yeah, if it's something personal, you can definitely contact the office and I can talk to you guys individually.
Thank you.
Could you mention what the SAR report was again and where we get that from?
Yep, the SAR report stands for Student Aid Report. Once you've completed your FAFSA, you are going to log back on to fafsa.ed.gov, and it's going to, you're going to click on the current year that you've completed the FAFSA for. And then you're going to scroll down on the page, and there's going to be I think 3 little links. One is going to say make a correction. One is going to say print student aid report, and the other one, I can't remember what the third one is. So you click on student aid report and it's going to pull up a PDF, and that PDF is going to tell you exactly what you're eligible for, exactly how much in student loans the student is eligible for, what categories the student is eligible for, if they're eligible for a Pell Grant. But you want to make sure you just have that available just for future reference. But it's actually a PDF that will upload after you click on that link on FAFSA.
Thank you.
Will this video and tutorial be available online, or like a recording so that we could review? Because my son is a junior.
Okay.
So we don't start till, based on your thing, till October or September. Right.
Yes.
Okay. So
And next year, I'm going to do a FAFSA webinar and
Okay.
show you exactly how to do the FAFSA. Hopefully, coronavirus will be gone and we can do a workshop here in the office where I can be with you guys in person and walk you through it, because the FAFSA sometimes can be tricky. You might have to reset passwords, the FSA ID is not working, there's all sorts of issues that can arise. And it's just knowing how to navigate that document that makes it easier. It's not very complicated, but it's just a little bit time consuming.
So will you be doing it before September, hopefully this year?
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
Yep. We're going to have a series of webinars and just workshops that are revolving around college admissions from this point forward.
Okay. Thank you.
One last question about the income on the FAFSA. If you
Okay.
fill it out your junior year, and let's just say, do they base your scholarships on the family's junior year income then that was filed that year, or do they re-up it the next year, your senior year?
So this is where it gets kind of complicated, because they changed this about 3 years ago. So it used to be that current year, but what they were finding is that a lot of students were saying, my parents haven't filed their taxes yet, and so I'm estimating what my parents' income is. Or they would see that it wasn't getting done in February, which is when it usually was open, and they weren't getting the FAFSA until June. So what FAFSA did was they said, okay, we're not going to use the current year at all. We're going to use 2 years prior so that you have your tax transcripts available to you. So if he's a junior, he's going to be completing the 2021 or 21-22 application, correct? I think so. And so he's going to use the 2020. I have to verify what year, but the 2020 or the 2019 taxes. So it's 2 years prior. And so there are a couple of things that can happen with that, because we know income can change, especially with what is happening right now. Your students are going to be right smack dab in the middle of maybe parents not making as much as they did in the prior years. So what happens with that is, because you have to use 2 years prior, there's usually an appeal process at the university where you can fill out certain paperwork and say, I didn't make that much this year, but when I had to complete the FAFSA, I did make that much. So it's just going to take a little bit more communication with the university that your student is attending.
I have a question along those terms. When they're looking at 2 years prior income, any liquid assets and the student and the parents, such as savings accounts, that will be considered part of the parental or student's contribution to pay for their tuition?
So that's a little bit tricky because when you're completing the FAFSA, I don't believe they have those exact questions on there. What has to happen in order for you not to get those additional questions is when you're completing the FAFSA, there is a section called the DRT. That stands for Data Retrieval Tool. And that data retrieval tool is a link that is going to take you to the IRS website, and it's going to import the taxes that they're looking for directly into the application. And this eliminates the process of estimating or having to look at your tax return and looking at a certain line and entering it into the FAFSA. But it also does one added step and eliminates your chances to be asked additional questions later on. So where all of that property and assets and all of that information is going to come into play is if the student is selected for verification. And verification means that it's a random selection either by the university or by the FAFSA, and they just want to clarify information that was entered into the FAFSA application itself. And that's where they ask for that information and ask for letters and ask for savings accounts and checking accounts and that sort of thing. So if you use the data retrieval tool when completing the FAFSA itself, it eliminates your chances of being selected for that additional information.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Riel, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What if a student applies for private scholarships like during sophomore year or early junior year? Can they hold it until school starts, or does it expire after a certain amount of time?
So they can hold it. So when they apply for those scholarships, the scholarship knows exactly what year they're in and when they're going to college. Because on the application, it usually asks, when will you be attending college? And so if they're awarded a scholarship in their sophomore, junior year, they know exactly where they are at. And so what they want to hold on to is their award letter. Because usually that is the backup of, you know, the award. And so what they'll want to do is keep that award letter and any documentation like a certificate or an email, and then in their senior year, contact that scholarship and say, I got this in my sophomore or my junior year, and I would like it to be sent to this university. But remember, that's only private scholarships. Institutional scholarships, they are awarded to the student based on their admissions application and their academic performance in high school, and them sending in their transcripts, their unofficial transcripts, their ACT scores, their SAT scores, and then the school will send an award letter with their institutional scholarship on there.
Great.
And institutional scholarships, you know, they can range from $7,000 a year to $30,000 a year. It's usually based on how much the cost of attendance is. And the university tries to kind of even out the cost of attendance. Now, it's important to understand that even if a school has an institutional scholarship, based on just their application for admissions, they always have secondary scholarships based on merit or academic performance in high school at the school. But they might not always advertise it on their website. They might not always advertise it, you know, in their advertisements. Asking the admissions department or the financial aid department at the university that you want to go to, is there honor scholarships? Are there additional programmatic scholarships? You need to be asking those questions so that they can send you the links to apply for those. They're usually not advertised just randomly on the website.
No, why is that?
I'm not sure why. I think it might have something to do with when I worked for one specific university, it was a way for me to talk to people. And I was able to target certain students with certain GPAs, certain academic performance, so that I could reach out to them, talk to them and say, I have this additional scholarship and this is how you apply. And it made me able to create a relationship with the families that I wouldn't have if I was just sending an email or if it was listed online. So I'm assuming that's why universities do that.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
This may not be related to this seminar, so if it isn't, you can tell me where to
That's
go.
okay.
When I heard you mention a junior scholarship or a sophomore scholarship, is there kind of a good place to go or a highly lucrative scholarship website where you could start a search like that? Because I haven't considered it since my daughter was a sophomore and I didn't know if we should at that point.
So I actually use the philosophy for scholarships that I do Google searches regularly because you never know where you're going to find scholarships. There's a lot of scholarship sites that will have a student sign up and they have to create an account. And by creating that account, they're going to get like a ton of spam email. They're going to get a lot of marketing towards them. So there's not one single scholarship site that I would recommend. I do recommend Googling and looking at everything that you find. Maybe in that search, type in college scholarships for high school juniors, college scholarships for our high school sophomores. Because they know you're going to use it in college, but they also know that what you're looking for is something that revolves to someone in their sophomore year of high school. So I actually don't have a specific site that I utilize. I kind of look at everything and I look at scholarships that aren't going to be necessarily marketed in the high school. So what I found when I was working for a university is those scholarship packets that the high school gives out, every single high school student in that high school is applying for the same one. And there might only be one or two. So what I found was the same students would get the same scholarships over and over and over again. You'd go to these award ceremonies and there would be one student getting 10 scholarships and then everybody else got one. So I kind of think out of the box and not only apply for the ones that the high school is going to provide, but also apply for almost anyone that you can find that you qualify for on a Google search. And there's scholarships from everywhere. There's Ronald McDonald Scholarship Foundation, and I believe that's like a $10,000 scholarship. There's a lot of scholarship money out there, and not a lot of people want to put in the work to find them. So that's what's really important.
Yeah, thank you, because I did notice they were marketed a lot and I didn't want my daughter getting a bunch of spam. They all requested we sign up for these accounts.
Yeah, it is kind of overwhelming, especially if you have a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old and they're like, what is this? They'll get your cell phone number and they'll like send you text messages. My daughter is 17 and she comes down with her phone constantly and asks me if she should click on a link. So it's really going to be important for the parent to get involved, even though I know it's a lot of work, but it makes you knowledgeable about where the scholarships are located also. And I can kind of do some research and put maybe some scholarship sites that, some links that are there, and make a newsletter, and I can email those out, and then you guys can click on the links and and look at them yourselves. Quick question, how many seniors do I have on here? None?
My son's a junior.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So you will be starting this process at full force in October. Well, so the good thing is that at Excel, we are here to answer any questions that you might have. We do have college counseling sessions. So if you're interested in doing college counseling, let Mr. Brandon know, and he can talk to you about what that process looks like. But I have experience from point A to point Z. If you get selected for verification, I can walk you through that entire process of what verification looks like. And so if you guys are interested in getting help in depth, please contact Mr. Brandon even next year. And Heeman and I work together to answer any questions that you might have. And if we don't know it, then we will research and find that answer for you. The problem with going to college, especially if a parent doesn't know what this process looks like, is just having nobody to answer those questions for you. That's the most frustrating part of this whole process, because there's so much and it's so in depth that just having someone that can answer a question is helpful. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions regarding the financial aid, we will be having another webinar soon. So we have some medical students that are going to University of Reno now, and they are in the BSMD program, which is lining them up for medical school. They're actually going to be having a webinar. I'm not sure if it's going to be during spring break. I think it's going to be during spring break. And talking to students that might want to go to medical school and what this process looks like, and additional essays that need to be written. So we're going to have firsthand accounts from actual students that are going to be answering any question that you might have on what that looks like. So go ahead and keep an eye out for that email, and keep an eye out for maybe a newsletter that's going to come out advertising that webinar. Okay, well, we will let you know how this this video will be available, and I'll try to send out the PowerPoint so that you guys have those links. And if you have any questions or you need any one-on-one help, contact the Henderson office, and I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for attending. I will talk to you soon.